What is up, guys? Today on the Football Guys Dynasty Football Show, we're diving into free agency recap and how it affected your dynasty teams. We're going to be doing a full breakdown. I know last week we touched on a little bit, but let's dive in. We got a lot of topics, and we're going to start with Justin Fields. He got traded to Pittsburgh for a conditional 6, possibly a 4th for playing time. Right now, he is QB 25. He dropped the QB 25 on Keep Trade Cut, and most dynasty rankings out there have him outside the top 20. What do we think about this move? I mean, we can talk about Russell Wilson together, too. He's there as well. Dynasty Impact right now, he's QB 29 at that same site. So when we're looking at this quarterback room, we're looking at Fields or Wilson or one of these guys, what do we make from these moves that happened this last week, Jeff?
I think the Steelers saw an opportunity. I think Justin Fields saw an opportunity. It sounds like everything around regarding that, he was looking for the best potential landing spot, and the team was willing to get him there. And I think Pittsburgh probably was. I think if you look back at it, Ryan Poles probably overplayed his hand, and then he saw all the chairs fill up in free agency. And so he decided that now's the time I have to get something for him. And he just got something for him. It's just I think it's a frustrating move if you've got Justin Fields in Dynasty, obviously, in Superflex leagues. But at the same time, he does have an opportunity there. I think George Pickens is a nice player that complements his skill set well, the ability to attack vertically in the running game that we've seen Arthur Smith put in. It's just, is he going to be able to beat Russell Wilson out for a job? And that's a major question.
Yeah, I think that's the question, and something that we're going to debate for a while, because the team did come out and say that Russell Wilson is the starter. This isn't a competition. Justin Fields is going to back him up. But I think there's certainly a difference in saying that in March versus when they get on the field in August. Because if you turn the film on over the last 2 years and really over the back half of the 2022 season, if you start at the midpoint of that year when Luke Getsy kind of figured out how to use Justin Fields, the film from Justin Fields has been better than Russell Wilson since that point. And they have an opportunity to potentially build and have a franchise quarterback with this very, very cheap option. You know, they're paying him $3 million this year. They're probably not going to pick up his 5th-year option if I had to guess. And so we're looking at a 1-year rental, but see what we've got. And they're going to see him in practice and things like that. I think there's a chance that Justin Fields, I think Justin Fields should start week 1, but I think that there's a chance that Justin Fields sits for 4, 5, 6 weeks until Arthur Smith can't handle Russell Wilson anymore. And so they try something else with a little bit more mobile quarterback. I mean, when we look back at Justin Fields' evaluation, one of the most prominent comps was Russell Wilson, like a bigger version of Russell Wilson. And so it's very interesting to see them in the same quarterback room now, especially with one player kind of ascending. And you can, a lot of people will say Justin Fields didn't get much better last year, but I think he took some small steps, and I think we can say that there's a chance that he becomes the Steelers' long-term starter. I don't understand why you wouldn't try that out at some point on the field before the end of this season, especially because you have to figure it out. I know they're talking about extending Russ because they want to do right by him. I don't know why that's being discussed right now before Russell Wilson has taken a snap. But it's certainly something to monitor. It's probably the most interesting quarterback room right now.
I think the overplayed analysis of this is like if Russell Wilson can play quarterback, because he can. We've shown that he can play quarterback to a degree that allows teams to be competitive, I guess you could say. Like, I know the win-loss record, but we can't just sit here and say that a quarterback wins don't matter and then use a win-loss record say he's bad either. Like, there's nuance, there's context to both. I think when you're looking at it from a dynasty perspective, so he has a big opportunity. If he goes out and plays better than Russell Wilson down the stretch and maybe solidifies himself, probably gets that like Baker deal, maybe next year would be like ideal maybe for him. Like, hey, he gets that money, the guaranteed money that he got. As a dynasty manager, then you're playing with house money based on his dynasty ranking. If you're going to go out there and buy him or whatever, but it is a risk, right? So that's the risk that you have to take. I just go back to who is starting right now, projected. We know the draft has not happened yet out there at the quarterback position. Jarrett Stidham is possibly starting for the Denver Broncos this season. Aiden O'Connell, possibly, depending on what they do there. When you're thinking of like other guys that are out there, Will Levis, right? I think Justin Fields is better than Will Levis as a starting quarterback. Will Levis is starting this year. And you just keep going through there, right? You just keep going through the list, and you're sitting there, Sam Darnold possibly out there, Derek Carr, those type of guys, Daniel Jones. Like, I think teams out there are going to be looking at this being like, hey, Justin Fields could give us, maybe he doesn't become that top 5 guy, top 10 guy that we all thought, or a lot of people thought, right? I'm pretty agnostic. I've always been with Justin Fields. I'm not one side like these guys on that debate. But he does have a bridge. There's a bridge to where he can be a bridge quarterback and still give you fantasy points, right? That's what we're looking at. If he's starting out there, no matter what team it's for, I mean, he's still a top 10 guy in fantasy football. So that's really, I think, the narrative that you have to look at is like, hey, he could be a very, very good value right now. Now, you can't buy him right now. People aren't selling him right now. Like, so there's going to be the first few weeks of that season is going to be important. If Russell playing kind of well, you might be able to go out there and buy Fields or whatever. But I do think he's going to get an opportunity at some point, either with the Steelers or after next year, possibly in that bridge type area where we're like, oh, hey, Baker went to Tampa Bay, or one of these guys, these areas go in there. Jeff, any final thoughts on these guys?
I think that there is a scenario that Fields outplays Russell Wilson in camp and they decide Fields is going to be the starter, and Russell Wilson, given his contract, kind of asked for his release so he can go somewhere else and go be the quarterback. I mean, that's a real scenario. And so I think that not to ignore that. I mean, certainly right now, and I think too, I think people get lost on, at least from what I've seen, people get really lost on the Bears were going to decide where he was going to go. And you see a lot about, oh, well, the Raiders decided they would rather have Gardner Minshew than Justin Fields. And that's not the case at all. That's not what happened. And that's really poor analysis if that's your opinion on what of the situation, because I think that they're just, you ran through that list and all those teams would likely rather start Justin Fields week 1 than the guy that they have put in there. But like I said at the top, I think that Ryan Poles at the start of this had a very high price tag on the way that this franchise in particular values Justin Fields, and nobody was willing to meet it. And I think we've seen it. If you play fantasy football and you know somebody wants to trade a player and they go around the league and the league kind of lowballs them, and then all of a sudden you see an offer that, or see a trade completed that you say, well, geez, I would have beat that, because people get frustrated and people make decisions when they get frustrated.
Yeah, one last note. If you don't want to take our opinions on if Justin Fields has an opportunity to start moving forward, if you go through Chicago media, they have a grading scale at CHGO Sports. Adam Hogue, I think, is the guy that does it. Grades based on like an NFL grading system and determines like, so 2 years ago, Justin was, I believe, potential to be a long-term starter is what he graded at, but he wasn't all the way there. This last year, even through the ups and downs, through the broken thumb, like there were a lot of things working against Justin Fields again in 2023. He graded him as an NFL starter. You've got Benjamin Solak from The Ringer he's writing articles saying like, this kid should have netted way more than a 6th-round pick. But obviously Ryan Poles did right by him. So I do think from a dynasty perspective, it's important to keep your mindset on like, if you're holding Justin Fields shares, just be patient. Don't, like, someone sent me an offer yesterday. It was like Justin Fields for the 204. And while, that sounds kind of nice at this point, like add another piece to my team, the upside of Justin Fields just is way higher than 204 at this moment. For me, I know some people would jump at that in certain scenarios, but I have a pretty strong roster. So I'm being patient, holding Justin Fields and hoping that Jeff and Kevin are right, that he does end up somewhere, at least by 2025.
Yeah, it's just for context, some trades that are going on right now. Justin Fields the 110 for Baker Mayfield in the 205. And that feels like Baker this year. I can wait for Fields next year. And you get that 205 back with it and the 110 you added there. I actually don't mind that for either side. I actually think that's a pretty fair deal across the board. And then Russell Wilson right now, he went for Alvin Kamara yesterday. It was after the Fields news. So, he still kind of has a window where you can maybe pivot off of Russell Wilson. If I can get Kamara, I probably would do that at this point for Russell Wilson, unless you really think he's going to bounce back. I'm not sure there. Any thoughts on those two trades, Jeff, before we move on?
I mean, I'm still willing to hold Justin Fields at the 110 and the Baker Mayfield in the 205 is what I can get for. I mean, I would rather have the 110. It opens up more flexibility as we get deeper and closer to rookie drafts. And all we need is one player. Really kind of what we're looking at right now is a tier of 8 or 9. And so you're really just hoping one guy lands in a good spot. And once by the time your rookie drafts come around.
All right, before we move on, make sure you go to rookieguide.footballguys.com and you can find our rookie guide there. We have version 2 out. And make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. Comment below with any questions, trades, or thoughts on the topic.
Also, we have Football Guys Fridays on Reddit. It's an AMA series, tackles the combine, free agency, the NFL draft. I'm sure a lot of that stuff's going to be NFL draft heavy, some free agency recap. But really, any questions that you want to ask a Football Guys analyst can be found over on Reddit. Jagger May is going to be there this upcoming Friday. We have Sigmund Bloom on there on March 29th. And on April 5th, we have Matt Waldman on there. I'm sure there will be more. We're very much so appreciating this partnership with Reddit. So go over to r/ fantasy football and get your questions in. I think they post on Mondays, so you can look back. There should be a post already where you can input your questions over there.
All right, let's dive into some other news. So Kirk Cousins, 4 years, 80 million, or the 80. Wait, was it 80 million? It was more. Did I make that messed up? No, it was 80 million, right?
No, it's 80 million guaranteed.
That's right.
Or
That's what I put down.
guaranteed.
See, this is what happens when I do the show sheet in the morning. So 80 million guarantee, whenever you have that. 4 years, probably a 3-year deal, more than likely, 2 to 3 year deal there. But he jumped to QB 19 for dynasty purposes. So really just kind of a 3 or 4 spot jump, to be honest with you, based on where he was going in startups this offseason. I think, really with him as the dynasty impact is with his other guys, right? So we have, London, wide receiver 9, Bijan Robinson, running back 1, Mooney, wide receiver 62, and then Pitts jumped up the tight end 4. So like the impact for Kirk Cousins, I think from dynasty perspective, is all those other weapons around him. London jumps in the top 10 for the first time, I think, in his dynasty kind of career in terms of the value, possibly. Bijan obviously has been there, but Pitts back in the top 4. We're talking about Kyle Pitts again in dynasty there. So what do you think of this move for Kirk Cousins to Atlanta, Jeff?
I think the biggest thing is looking ahead and forecasting ahead. And I think that that's one of the things that I think a lot of people struggle with. You look at Drake London, and Drake London has been a major buy for me in Dynasty over the last 2 months or so, 3 months. I've acquired him kind of all over, and I stopped kind of acquiring him over the last month or so because this buzz started to bubble up about Kirk Cousins. It was right around the combine that rumor dropped. And when that happens, everybody says, go buy Drake London. And you need to be in position that you've already done that. And I think that if you're looking ahead and looking at these situations and willing to take maybe a little bit of risk, but when you look at a player like Drake London, he couldn't have been in a worse scenario than what he was already in last year, with playing with Desmond Ridder, playing with Arthur Smith. So you knew it was going to be better. And so to buy him at last year's prices, knowing for sure this has got to improve some way or another, it can't get worse. And I think that's now you see Kirk Cousins married there, and you see what Kirk Cousins has been able to do for Justin Jefferson, the addition of Darnell Mooney, having Kyle Pitts there, having some depth. Hopefully they kind of use, Zach Robinson's coming from the Rams, and they definitely use Kyron Wiliams as a bell cow. Hopefully they do the same with Bijan Robinson, and that will allow the value, really those top 3 guys is what you're looking for. And Cousins lands nicely as a kind of the situation that he's been in, as always, as a fringe quarterback 1. You feel good with him landing there.
Yeah, I still maintain that the big addition is Zach Robinson, because I don't think that any of this matters a whole lot if we don't have a good offensive coordinator. But I believe we do. It'll be a first-time play caller, which I do. We get excited about guys a lot. This is one where you can see the path for success, but I think there could be some lumps. I will say I don't think they're done adding to the wide receiver room. The Rondale Moore trade certainly helps their depth, but they were barren. They just had absolutely nothing. A lot of people are suggesting that they could add a day 2 receiver. I think that ultimately just is helping the team. I think when you look at these fantasy assets, Drake London to me has always been a top 10 guy. I know I was probably over ranking him at that moment, but kind of anticipating at some point he would get good quarterback play. And so now we're here. Darnell Mooney is one of those guys that I think is going to rise a little bit. If they don't add someone, I think he's a solid secondary piece that I think could get you, wide receiver 3 weeks. And I think that that's valuable even in Dynasty, especially when we look through the depth of what's going on in the NFL. And then Kyle Pitts resurgence. We're here. I'm ready for it. I'm ready to talk about Kyle Pitts again. We went on a hiatus. We were talking about him every show last year, I feel like, and we haven't talked about him in a while. So this is just perfect for that. I can't wait to talk about him every day for the next 20 shows.
Yeah, for me, I was kind of a Kirk Cousins guy this offseason. I was saying, hey, grab him right now as your QB2 if you're win now mode in that rounds 5 to 8 range in startups. I think that he provides you to me, Kirk Cousins is that perfect bridge on a win now team if you want Bryce Slater. Like if you grab a quarterback in the first round, you got Kirk Cousins. Okay, I'll take a shot on Bryce Young or Will Levis or one of those guys like that. You're okay. He's my QB3. He's that bridge guy for me. But I'm more willing to take a risk on a guy like that in terms of where they're at. And to Jeff's point, yeah, I mean London was a buy. Everybody kind of knew that though. So that's the one area of it is like, is he really a buy or is he just that trendy buy that everybody says, right? Because we always have those guys in Dynasty. And I think that he was to a point. I think that he was probably valued at wide receiver 12. So how much big of a jump was it? I don't know. It was a little bit. But there was a trade here I thought was interesting. So Saquon Barkley and Kirk Cousins for Aaron Rodgers and Jahmyr Gibbs. So that's that perfect win now trade, probably for both sides there. But would you rather, does the Gibbs side tilt you? So this is 12-team Superflex tight end premium. Not that the tight end premium matters with these players, but what side are you at there, Jeff?
I think the Gibbs side does tilt me there a little bit. I mean, I know we're probably going to talk about Saquon Barkley at some point, but I think Jahmyr Gibbs has that ceiling that he can be. Some people have him as their dynasty running back 1, dynasty running back 2. Saquon Barkley, I mean, it's kind of declining value, even if he did land in an interesting spot. But I would lean there. I do want to make one quick note. A player that we didn't mention that I think is interesting, bringing in Rondale Moore, and then they brought in Ray McLeod today as well. And so Zach Robinson coming from that Rams offense they've used 3 wide receivers very, very heavily. And even with the addition of Darnell Mooney, it was wide open for them to add another wide receiver into this mix. And maybe they decide to do that, but sitting there in the top 10, I mean, that was in play, but I think adding Rondale Moore is a little bit of an underrated piece to add in there and kind of use that Tutu Atwell role that we kind of saw with the Rams last year and kind of feel comfortable that he might be the wide receiver 3. But keep your eyes out. They might go and add one more piece in the draft here that could shake this up just a little bit more.
Could be the Demarcus Robinson role. That was an interesting role, I thought. I thought that was like one of those things, like if they could draft somebody maybe later, in terms of that area. Maybe they like some of these guys, Corley, Leggett, maybe those guys. I know some of us are in and out of those guys, but that's an interesting piece there. All right, let's jump over to some running backs because we always talked about the running back class, especially the free agent running back class being kind of a big thing. So Derrick Henry, 2 years, $16 million, going to the Ravens. He's a running back 18 right now on Keep Trade Cut. That's generally speaking where he was kind of in running back 18 to 28. Everybody expected him to probably sign somewhere. What do we expect from this? So, I would look at Henry as a 1-year asset going for it in terms of with that value. I got him for the 210 when I was going for it when I had no dynasty trades in my, trade deadlines. So I'm pretty happy having Henry for another year on a contender. Right now he's going for the 206, so mid second round. So I guess it comes down to what is our expectations for Henry in this Ravens offense? I think everybody thinks it's a boom, right? Do we have any reason to think it could be a bust, Jeff?
I mean, we do because we saw Todd Monken at Georgia use multiple backs. They like Justice Hill. They have Keaton Mitchell. I don't know if he's able to make a comeback next year or not. We know that this offense doesn't throw to the running backs, and traditionally Derrick Henry doesn't catch passes. And so there's definitely a boom path here, but I think it is a little bit more touchdown dependent than maybe some people are realizing, given the way that we've seen Monken use multiple backs in the past. And I think that it wouldn't be surprising to me for Baltimore to have kind of an idea that they think they're going to be a very good team. So if they want to save Derrick Henry for later in the season, maybe they save some of that wear and tear and look for them. They might dip into the draft again too.
Yeah. I mean, Gus Edwards averaged 11 and a half PPR points last year. So to me, he assumes that role. I do anticipate that Justice Hill and Keaton Mitchell will be involved. And so I think at RB18 and from a dynasty perspective, I would be selling pretty quickly. I have him as my RB23, but even that, as I was putting him there, I was like, well, I guess if I get one more year of production, I would value that as a low RB2 in dynasty. But also I think we are looking at 1 or 2 years. He still has juice. Don't get me wrong. I think he was the least washed of the older guys that were available in this carousel here, but I don't necessarily. I think Derrick Henry going there 4 years ago was the path for Derrick Henry. And unfortunately, we never got to see that. I think he can be a fine asset for 1 year, but the 206, to me, it depends on my construction, of course. I'll take the easy way out here, but if I'm a contender, I'm probably holding Henry. If I'm not, I'll probably take the 206 there. So, and that's kind of like, I'd prefer a higher pick, and maybe he's in that range where you prefer to get more for him, but you're not willing to pay more for him if you're trying to acquire him. So he's an interesting player in Dynasty right now.
Actually pulled some stats for the first time maybe ever, but if you combined all the Ravens running back attempts last year, they had 363 rushes between the group of them, and that's kind of just a good Derrick Henry season. So that kind of paints the picture there of what Lamar Jackson contributes in the rushing game, but also if that pie gets split at all, you're looking at, kind of, again, running back 18 might be where he lands in that range, maybe a high-end running back 2 just in redrafts. And so to have that in Dynasty for a guy that's nearly 30 years old is a little bit aggressive valuation.
Counterpoint, Gus Edwards scored 13 touchdowns last year, and I think Derrick Henry could score more than that if they gave him the ball in the red zone too. That's the hard part with him. It's like, I think the Titans struggled there. As someone who had Henry last year, like every time they got in the red zone, it felt like they never gave him the ball, or they just struggled in that red zone because their offensive line was terrible. Now he goes to a better offensive line. I think everything lines up for it. Well, a little better.
We'll
They're
see
better
how much
Titans.
better.
What are you talking about right now?
So they traded Morgan Moses, and now they have like 3 new starters on that offensive line currently. So, I mean, they have time. That's the thing. We have to see how they build that offensive line before really. But go ahead. Sorry.
Better than the Titans. All right. I didn't say it was the best offensive line in the NFL. I just said it's going to be better than the Titans. All right.
Yeah, that's fair.
Let's talk about Joe Mixon. A 3 years, $24 million deal with the Texans, probably a 2-year deal. This was an interesting, I thought, for the Texans to go grab a running back. They had Singletary last year. Obviously, he moved on. We'll talk about him a little later. His Dynasty Impact running back 20. Mixon is not been amazing. So Joe Mixon the last few years, hasn't been in terms of just efficiency, not really there. But you know what he's done? He's just scored fantasy points, right? Like, he had the touchdowns. He had more targets last year, which you like to see there. He comes into a pretty good role with the Texans, with what you saw Singletary do. And I think the thing is, 64 targets last year was awesome. And then him with Stroud there, I think they will utilize him the same way they use Singletary. I don't see Dameon Pierce being a problem there. I like the spot for him. I thought it was great. As far as trades goes, he went Joe Mixon, Michael Pittman for Drake London. So kind of talk about Drake London a little bit in terms of that value, where it's at. If you could pair those guys and get Drake, I'd love that. If you could do that, I would do that in a heartbeat. So what do you think of the Joe Mixon move, Jeff?
I mean, it's ideally probably his best landing spot if he were going to leave Cincinnati. The Texans didn't really involve the running back in the passing game much last year. Devin Singletary had about 38 targets. And so that kind of, limits, it's almost half of what Joe Mixon typically saw. We've seen the efficiency be way down. And so you're hoping for a high-powered offense that can score a lot of touchdowns, get him in the end zone, and maybe throw him the football, which is where he was before. And we saw what he did there. And so that's kind of where I see it there. I think it's important to know that some of the guys that we're talking that will come up, but especially when you flash back to last year's draft, the way that really landing spots wrecked the value of a lot of players because a lot of teams doubled up. When I see a team go out and add a guy like Derrick Henry or add a guy like Joe Mixon, I see that as that team is saying the running back position is a problem for us. And I don't see them stopping at that veteran. And I think so that's something to keep in mind here, where it's easy to say, well, Joe Mixon's going to be the star running back for the Texans and Derrick Henry is going to be the only running back for the Ravens. But to me, that's a signal that franchise has looked internally and said, we need to get better at this position. And a later round draft pick, a 3rd, 4th round draft pick could be added there and to even mess it up just a little bit more.
I love this fit for Joe Mixon. When you look at his best seasons, it was earlier in his career when they were really implementing a zone rushing attack. His best season in 2021 from a yardage standpoint at the very least, but I think it's his best film, even though the efficiency was still kind of down that year. That's his best season, though, statistically, and that is the season he ran the most zone scheme runs. So when you start to look at, okay, how did the Bengals use him in 2021? How did Houston use their running backs last year? You're looking at a pretty perfect marriage. Now, I guess we can question if Joe Mixon still has everything that he had in 21. I think that's a legitimate question, but I do think that there is certainly a world in which he scores 15 touchdowns this year because this offense is so high powered. They'd get creative around the goal line, and I think that he could be a touchdown type of guy for them. That being said, in Dynasty, RB20 is like probably the highest I have him at 22 right now. So I guess it's kind of in that same range where you're kind of picking and choosing your old guys. That's kind of the tier that I have right there. So he's kind of one of my favorites of the new running back fits in terms of the older guys. So I guess I'd take Mixon in that scenario.
The way I look at that tier, the old dudes, sorry, Jeff, but like Joe Mixon, Henry, those kind of guys, Monty, possibly, even, I don't want to throw Najee Harris in there, but his knees are probably as old as that they are. Alvin Kamara, like those guys, the cheapest one. Give me the cheapest one. And I'm just going to roll with that. Like, to me, I think they're the close in that tier there. So like, but I love this for Mixon. You guys know I'm a big Mixon guy. I've been a big Mixon guy for my whole fantasy analyst career. So I do like that it's extended a little bit because people that have bought him, a lot of people last year were saying, get rid of him. And now we see that kind of that impact go. So this is one of those things too about these veteran running backs. Like, I think part of it is the class that's coming. I don't think that the NFL maybe doesn't like the class that's coming. So we have seen these contracts get doled out a little bit. But at the same time, they go maybe grabbing some of these veteran running backs isn't the death sentence that we always thought it was. Maybe grabbing the right guys at the right place for this class possibly is a way to go as you move forward because they're cheap. And then maybe you have that production for more than 1 year.
I think it's interesting because I think this is an example of where there's a discrepancy between startup value and trade value. Because I think in a startup, people are looking there sitting, well, I don't know if I want to be the guy to commit to one of these running backs when I'm drafting this team here in a startup. Whereas in a trade situation, I think a lot of times what you run into is people are more married to the name value on that. They're not quite as pragmatic as trying to aggressively capture or to trying to get anything for them. They're trying to aggressively capture the value off the name of what they're holding. And so I think it's an interesting scenario.
Yeah. All right. Let's jump over to our next one. Saquon Barkley, 3-year, $37 million to the Eagles, the dreaded Eagles. Why did you go to the Eagles, Saquon? I really liked you. Dynasty impact. He's actually a running back 8, guys, in terms of where he jumped up. So he definitely jumped up a little bit more than some people, when you're thinking of like Saquon and where he was at. Last year, mixed bag last year, right? 27 years old, played 70% of the snaps in basically 11 games. Looked okay in like explosive run rate when you look at it from, the data, 17th in the NFL, but he definitely took a hit, like, tackles forced. They didn't do very well there. Yards after contact went down after attempt. So he's getting older. We know that. But part of the problem was it was the Giants offensive line, which is, I would argue was one of the worst, if not the worst, with the Jets last year. So like part of that, I think, is like, what do we look at? Now he's going to the Eagles. We see probably with Kelsey retiring on that offensive line, they were going to take a small hit, but I don't think too big of a hit, especially when I don't know the name of the guard that's probably going to move over to the center. Christian might know that. I do know that he's out there. But they're moving over. So I think they are going to have that consistency there. But a lot of people love this spot. I'm probably more neutral to this spot, to be honest. At running back 8, he might be a trade piece for me. Where are you leaning, Jeff?
There's two arguments to be made here because I think when you look at it realistically, I don't know if the passes are going to be there to the running back position because we haven't seen that traditionally. And I don't know if the goal lane is going to be there because of what we've seen traditionally out of Jalen Hurts. But I think when you break down really what Saquon Barkley's game has been about in his career, he's the type of player that he'll go out and he'll lose 2 yards or lose 1 yard, or maybe here's a 1 yard run. And then all of a sudden here's a 65-yard touchdown run. And that's the way that's what a lot of his career when he's been running well has been built upon. And so I think that this is an offense that absolutely opens up for that. You got downfield blocking. AJ Brown as a downfield blocker, the addition of Devontae Parker potentially as a downfield blocker, the spacing, the lanes that can be created, the strength of this offensive line, it opens wide up for him to have big splash plays. And so if he's able to stack multiple of those, stay healthy and do that, then yeah, the ceiling could be there. But I think that there were definitely better landing spots that would have involved him more as a primary receiver and more as a goal line player. And so it's I understand why people would view this as a smash spot. I just don't know that it's the elite of the elite potential spots.
I think the tush push is going to go away with Jason Kelce retiring, or at least go away as frequently as we saw it, because while everyone said, wow, they're so good at this, Jason Kelce was good at it. Jason Kelce is the one that kind of drove that being so successful for the Eagles. And if you get rid of the tush push, I think we're looking at a potential top 5 season from Saquon, at least this year. I do worry about the tread on those tires, and his film after the injury, after returning from injury, just hasn't been as good as it was before injury. But another year removed from that, I think in an offense where he's not going to get hit a whole lot, clear upgrade from DeAndre Swift from a football perspective. So the Eagles got significantly better. Sorry, Kevin. But I do think for fantasy, there's a lot of upside here that I think, is built into that value. I think that 8's high, though. I mean, he's 27. That's really high. So I like the fit personally. Like Jeff said, I don't know that it's the perfect landing spot, but it's definitely not a bad one at all.
8 is high, but like when you look at the guys around him, like ETN, Walker, Jacobs, Cook, Pacheco, possibly Rashad, like, I mean, you look at talent, Saquon, like, and what he can do when he's healthy. There is like, oh yeah, I'll buy into that offense. And I think this is the first time he's had real weapons around him to where they're not going to just be able to key on him, right? And I think there's like little context things in terms of that. I think the thing I worry about the most is that offense on the goal line. If you're right, if the tush push does go away, then yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good point. But if it doesn't, then we're back to this thing where, or I can't wait till we get like Gainwell out there scoring touchdowns on the goal line just to piss off Saquon Barkley managers, because that's going to happen. But that's part of it there. All right, we got to get into just these last few. Josh Jacobs, 4-year, $48 million to the Packers. Dynasty impact, he's running back 11 right now. He just went for Marquise Brown in the 202. So if you need a running back and you're willing to move off Marquise, who went to the Chiefs, and the early second, Josh Jacobs could be interesting there. Big deal for the Packers here. Obviously, they moved on from Aaron Jones, who goes to Minnesota. I'm gonna go Christian because he's always been a Josh Jacobs guy. So do you like the spot? Are you excited for this spot?
Not really. I think the Packers downgraded at running back this offseason. Because I'm more of an Aaron Jones guy than I am a Josh Jacobs guy. I think Aaron Jones is a better player, and I think we saw late in the last season that Aaron Jones still has it. I talked about this all last week, so we don't have to talk about that. But I think when you start to look at what Josh Jacobs was doing before he got injured last year, there was a clear decline. And I know that, kind of similar to Saquon, the offensive line situation wasn't great. I think there are still some question marks on the Packers offensive line. David Bakhtiari is not there anymore. I know he hasn't really been a focal point on that offensive line for a while now, but there's just, I feel okay about that offensive line, but I don't feel like this is a significant upgrade for Josh Jacobs. I think it's similar to what he was dealing with last year. And once it's similar to Saquon again, all the tread on Josh Jacobs' tires at age 26, man, I get a little nervous about how quickly he's going to decline because of his play style too. So I don't love it for anyone, really.
This was my favorite fit, to be honest. I think that when you look at the Packers traditionally, they really don't go out in free agency very often, and when they do, it's a pretty significant piece. And so the addition of Josh Jacobs, I think, speaks volumes there. And the big question is going to come down on what is really the Packers offense. Is it what we saw towards the end of last year where Jordan Love looked like he had full control, looked like he was going to move up into the upper echelon of stars potentially moving forward, and all those young receivers are going to blossom, and this is going to be an offense that has a very, very high ceiling? And if so, then Josh Jacobs, I think, has top 5 running back ceiling easily when you look at what he could potentially mean within that offensive scheme. Is it going to fall off, though? It is, because I think that when you look at these receivers, is there one of them that is really a game breaker? No, not really. And so I think if kind of NFL defenses figure them out a little bit, figure Jordan Love out a little bit, and have a game plan going into it, which is what we see quite often really in a player's second season starting, is that they get that first year and they kind of catch everybody by storm and surprise. And then teams have a full year of off season of looking at that offense and seeing how can they attack this player, and then how is he going to be able to counterpunch that? And so if we have an offense that struggles, then I think that you could be very right there, Christian, on bogged down and kind of where he was sitting in Oakland or in the Las Vegas and similar situations there. But I think that there is potential where this could be the best free agent fit and have the highest upside out of anybody.
So would you rather have him or Barkley?
I would, given the value in my fantasy league, I would rather have Barkley because I think that people are buying into more of that. But I would rather have trade Barkley for Josh Jacobs plus.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, look at you answering my question. You listened to me this show. I'm so proud of you. All right. Let me go through these last two running backs, and then we're going to go to the podcast version if you're watching on YouTube. Tony Pollard, 3 years, $24 million to the Titans. He moved to running back 23. And then DeAndre Swift, 3 years, $24 million to the Bears. He moved to running back 15. We're going to see a new offense in that range there. My big takeaway from this, and I'll jump over to the other guys, for me, it's Tyjae Spears is a value now. I'm still believing in that. I think that, he was going in. So I was doing a ADP show. I was kind of looking at it. He was going around 7 in terms of like where he was going in startups. That was Tyjae Spears. Now he's going like round 10, 11. I'll buy in that all day. Like as a 0 running back build, get him as my running back 2 or 3. I think that Spears still is the better player. I think him and Pollard will split time there. But I like Spears in that range. I don't really have a take on Pollard. I've seen Pollard. He is who he is. I think Spears is the more talented back. DeAndre Swift, I like it. It's going to be interesting to see how they mesh and how they do well there and see if they get the targets that you like there. If you have them, you hold them. But if I can get a better wide receiver and a tier up, I'd probably move off of Swift. Go ahead, Jeff. Talk about either one of these guys.
The Pollard move is interesting because I think it signals commitment to involving the running back in the passing game with Brian Callahan coming in there as head coach. I think that when you look at the skill set of Pollard, you look at the skill set of Tyjae Spears. To me, that speaks as they are saying a key part of Will Levis's development is going to be involving the running back in the passing game and we need 2 guys that are able to do that if we're going to commit to that. And so that's where I think that move is interesting. Swift, I think you're going to have excitement built around there with Caleb Wiliams, with the addition of Keenan Allen. But I still see this as potentially being a 3-headed backfield that gets pretty muddy.
I moved Tyjae up in my rankings after they added Pollard, which I know is counterintuitive, but I personally think that them adding one of these other guys was more threatening. I don't think Tony Pollard's very good. I just don't. I think he was once an explosive player. I didn't really see that last year. It just wasn't. It flashed every once in a while, and I think they asked him to do a little bit too much. But I just don't. I think Tyjae is going to be the lead back, and that people will point to the money and say, well, they're not going to pay him as such. Well, they don't have to pay Tyjae. They drafted Tyjae. So, and I know this regime, technically, this head coach didn't, but GM's still there. So, and I don't know if it was a Vrabel pick or what, but I think Tyjae's a good ad right now, especially because people are undervaluing him or devaluing him from where he was. And then on the Swift side, I really don't know. I don't know what this offense is going to look like. I think Caleb Williams is certainly going to throw the ball a lot more than Justin Fields did. I think that DeAndre Swift would be a beneficiary of that. If you look at how, maybe they start to incorporate some of the USC things to kind of ease Caleb into the NFL. And so if you start to incorporate some of that, you look at what Marshawn Lloyd was able to do when he was getting touches out of the backfield. I think that could be a nice little boost for Swift's value. But from an actual like week-to-week basis, I think it's very much so going to be, oh man, Roschon Johnson scored 10 points this week and DeAndre Swift has 4. I'm pretty bummed that I started DeAndre Swift. And so I think this is a kind of a bad landing spot as well. So, but as always, the full version of every show can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. If you're enjoying the show, make sure you head over to your favorite podcast app, subscribe to the Football Guys Dynasty Football Show.